Jazz Journalists Association is a nonprofit professional group. We're really interested in all forms of media and all forms of jazz. And we're about the idea that by doing jazz journalism, we are supporting information, documentation, analysis of jazz, a great American art form, a great contemporary art form. Most of the jazz journalists are living in the United States. The vast majority of them are male, pretty much between ages 25 and 80 now. We're having some senior jazz journalists who have often become researchers, work in centers like Rutgers Institute for Jazz Studies, pretty serious centers for jazz investigation, documentation. But most of us have some sort of journalistic background. It could be TV, could be radio, it could be journalism, could be writing books. Many of us are educators also. We welcome females into this little club. It's not an all-boys network, although there are fewer women in jazz journalism than we might like. We've also been trying to diversify or make sure we recognize jazz journalists who are not all of the same ethnic background. In other words, we're looking for Latinos and Asians and African Americans and people from every conceivable background, because everybody has something different to add to their analysis of this music. The music is so open, it can really support a lot of different discussion. The Jazz Journalists Association has done a couple things for the music, like really to try to keep the profile, the public profile of jazz high. One of the things that's most obvious about that we've done is to institute the Jazz Awards. So we have an annual awards program, which now is being videotaped. Last year it was streamed live. And we are trying to promote the best musicians that we think have been accomplished over the last year. We're trying to, let me say that again. We're trying to spotlight musicians who we think have really had high accomplishments during the previous year. We've done that every year. Next year will be the 15th year of the Jazz Awards. That's one of the things we've done. That's an international project, really. We have 350 members right now who can vote on these awards. Locally, we've tried to institute panel discussions so that we can raise the profile of individual jazz journalists, to put them in touch with their readership or their listenership, to identify these people who are behind the articles or behind the voices that are on the radio, or, you know, on the rare occasion that we have TV producers. So bring them out, show them to their audiences, show them to the musicians that we are covering, have some interaction with the musicians so that we can dispel some of the myths about jazz journalism. We can create better relationships with the people that we are covering. And I think that we've done a pretty good job of that. We've tried to tell jazz journalists that they are not alone. This is a real profession. It has real standards. There are people out there who are reading and listening and criticizing what the reading and listening is all about, who have a critical mind about our profession as well as about the music, and who are applying standards. I've been very heartened by the results of the Jazz Awards over the last 15 years. I don't think we've come up with a clinker yet in recognizing somebody who's really done great work. We are not only an avant-garde jazz journalist association, so we often recognize people who have been veterans really working in the field for a long time. And of course, when you have any kind of election, popularity is a part of it. Let's not kid ourselves. But the people who are popular in jazz also tend to be people who are really accomplished. And I think the Jazz Awards have recognized over and over again people who are making some great music. Oh, jazz journalism has changed so much. We've been dealing with more and more music coming in from more and more places. The music is still marginalized often. It's not like the major pop genre, but it's creativity all over this country and actually all over the world. And you know, we've seen stuff coming in from Asia, Australia, former Soviet Union, certainly Northern Europe, Central America, South America. So that's something that's changed a lot. We have to be able to cover that material. We have to, at least jazz journalists have to at least know about it, have some sense of what's going on. Then the other thing that's changed is the medium itself. It used to be that newspapers, many daily newspapers, would carry texts about jazz, reviews, overnight reviews, advances when somebody was coming to town. And newspapers are failing. They're having a really hard time. There are fewer newspapers by far than there were when I started. There are fewer jazz magazines, although sometimes scrappy little new publications do crop up. But what's changed is that in 1975, when I started, there was no internet, and there sure is now. And that's where people go for a lot of their information. I think jazz has changed by keeping pace with our society and with what the possibilities are for making music in the society. In the 60s, I used to go hear swing tenor players, swing to bop tenor players, usually small groups. The formats could be very similar. Head, solo, solo, head out. Always the instrumentation being drums, bass, a keyboard, usually saxophone or trumpet, sometimes a trombone. Maybe somebody would be doubling on flute. There might be a guitarist. Well, everything about this has changed. With the advent of people like Ornette Coleman and Sun Ra, Cecil Taylor, and then Miles Davis going electric, there have become many, many more possibilities. Jazz musicians took on electric instruments. They took on the possibilities of studio production that became vastly more sophisticated in the 1960s. They forged new relationship with other kinds of vernacular popular musics, so that gave rise to fusion, gave rise to investigations of Latin jazz, African jazz, there was an investigation of isolating the sounds in a more pristine environment, sort of what you get from ECM records. That was a big shift in the music also. So we followed right along. What's happening now is a great growth of educational opportunities for jazz musicians. How that plays out in the music in itself is very interesting. There's a lot of music that's more complex, that takes itself seriously, just as seriously as contemporary composition that's coming out of a classical lineage. And everybody's trying to represent their own ideas. I think there's still a lot of interest and belief in the long lineage of jazz tradition. Blues, swing, improvisation, ballads, the American songbook, but there's also an openness to new kinds of composition, new instruments, new ideas, self-expression that's done in a different way. We're not locked into formats. We're very free now.